So it looks like we have an update when it comes to the latest installment of the saga that is Ethan Page's Impact Wrestling contract, because of course Ethan Page now officially is a free agent after his Impact Wrestling contract has expired. It was due to expire on January 1st, 2021, and here we are, the day has come. Ethan Page is a free agent as far as we're aware. Now, when it comes to latest updates about his future and where he could end up next, there was an interesting development last night on social media when it comes to the merchandise on his website, because Ethan Page took to Twitter last night revealing that his merchandise related to his current in-ring name Ethan Page was going to be removed from his website at midnight, and that has subsequently happened. Now, as many of you know by now, we've covered it ad nauseum here on the channel, that Ethan Page's Impact Wrestling contract has expired. It expired last night at midnight, and it's been speculated heavily and reported by various outlets that he's not expected to re-sign with Impact Wrestling in the future. Furthermore, that he will be leaving the company once his contract expires, and even potentially Ethan Page not only could be leaving Impact Wrestling, but he could also possibly be dropping his name Ethan Page in the future. Now, when it comes to the merchandise being dropped from the store, he actually did this in quite a creative way, because there has been on his YouTube account and on his social media profiles, of course, Ethan Page has two personalities. He has Ethan Page, all ego, but he also has his alter ego, that being the Karate Man, and he's been hyping up for ages that we were going to see this battle, right? We're going to see the battle between Ethan Page and the Karate Man, and the epic battle finally took place on his YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out. Now, the stipulation was that if Ethan Page lost this contest against the Karate Man, he would then lose all the rights to sell his merchandise. The war ended, and unfortunately Ethan Page lost. Therefore, he was unable to sell the merchandise on his website, which is, I guess, is the prelude as to where we're going for the future when it comes to Ethan Page. But basically, if you haven't seen it, Ethan Page accepted the challenge to face Karate Man, and after an 8-minute battle, complete with plenty of special effects and green screens and all things fun and humorous, Ethan Page lost, and he must therefore remove all of the merchandise from his Played by Julian website. Now, obviously, people have been looking into this a variety of ways, because of course, as I've mentioned, his contract has expired with Impact Wrestling. As far as we're aware, he hasn't re-signed. He wasn't expected to re-sign, and many people are speculating he could be ending up in either AEW or WWE sometime in 2021, potentially as soon as possible, considering that his contract has now expired. What is very interesting about his merchandise being pulled from his store now, and certainly what got people talking when his merchandise was pulled from his store, is that typically that is a WWE move. Now, because the reason I say that is because a lot of the times when people have their own PWT store, or they have their own merchandise stores on their websites, once they sign with WWE, even if it's an NXT contract, a developmental deal, whatever you want to call it, WWE traditionally has them remove any merchandise stores that they currently have, so they can therefore sell them themselves through their channels, whether it's WWEshop.com, NXT Shop, whatever. Any outside merchandise WWE doesn't allow, because corporate media giants, how dare you make extra money on the side. So people are looking into this, saying, well, potentially, if Ethan Page has pulled the merchandise from his online store, is that an indication that All Ego is going to be heading to WWE, specifically NXT, in the future? Furthermore, as I mentioned, the discussions and rumours that Ethan Page could be set to drop his ring name and have a new ring name, again, that could be an indicator that Ethan Page could be set to go to WWE or NXT in 2021. Of course, you can't rule out AEW either, because AEW, potentially, they might just have him move to PWTs and move all of the merchandise off his own website. However, I would disagree with that potentially, because I think when you have to look at it that way, is that in the past, AEW, they don't really care too much what you're doing on the outside, whether it's Twitch streaming, whether it's YouTube, whether it's outside merchandise, whether it's appearing for certain people on independent shows that aren't televised, whether it's appearing for New Japan. If you've got it in your contract, they'll allow you to do it. They're really not stringent on those kind of rules as WWE usually are. So rightfully so, people are looking at it as an indicator. Does this mean Ethan Page is heading to the WWE? And when it comes to Ethan Page as well, we know he has had discussions with WWE. He confirmed that himself. He confirmed it over the summer. Ethan Page did an interview with Sports Illustrated over the summer, spoke about becoming a free agent in 2021 at the end of 2020. And he said, whilst my priority is Impact Wrestling, they've been great during this whole process. They've allowed me to speak to other companies, and I have spoken to other companies. It's been later revealed that those companies indeed were WWE, AEW, and MLW. Not that that was much surprise. If you talk about a top star in the independent scene or a smaller company like Impact Wrestling, if they say they've spoken to other companies, that means it's AEW or WWE, because they're the two biggest companies in North America, arguably the world. Throw New Japan in there as well. So it was no surprise that those were the companies that he was speaking to. But as I mentioned, now that his merchandise has been pulled, people are thinking, wow, we know he was talking to WWE, we know he's had discussions with WWE, and now his merchandise is getting pulled. If you try and line up the dots, they would be indicating potentially that he could be going to WWE in the near future. Now, when it comes to his Impact Wrestling appearances, are we going to see any more Ethan Page Impact Wrestling appearances? Well, I think the answer there is yes. Now, the reason you might say, well, that's slightly confusing because hasn't his contract just expired? Well, of course it has, but what we do know about all the information when it comes to Impact Wrestling's recent television tapings is that all the content has been filmed up to the Hard to Kill weekend. That was filmed back at the end of November, start of December. So all of Ethan Page's future Impact Wrestling appearances are already in the can. Therefore, it's highly likely we could see Ethan Page compete on Impact Wrestling television for at least the next couple of weeks as we head into the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. It's not out of the realm of possibility either that Ethan Page could actually appear either at Genesis or at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view as well. I mentioned this before about Taya Valkyrie, because Taya Valkyrie's in the same position as Ethan Page. Her contract is set to expire at the end of 2020, potentially at the start of 2021. We don't have an exact date like we do with Ethan Page. But the issue was with Taya Valkyrie is, like many people were saying, of course, Taya Valkyrie is challenging Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts Championship at Hard to Kill. Does that mean that Taya Valkyrie is re-signed with Impact Wrestling? Well, not necessarily, because we could absolutely see a situation where she did all of her commitments, or they filmed all of her Impact Wrestling on Access TV commitments at those Mammoth TV tapings a couple of weeks ago, but potentially they could, if they're loyal to Impact Wrestling and they have a good relationship with Impact Wrestling officials, which Ethan Page and Taya Valkyrie and others whose contracts are expiring do. They could say, look, I filmed all of those Impact on Access TV segments and matches. I'll come in for the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. It's a one-off. You can be, get given a one-off payment, whatever. It's a one-off date without a contract. Work on a handshake deal. You can do that pay-per-view. You can then be written off of Impact Wrestling television and out of Impact Wrestling storylines, and then you can move on. So just because Ethan Page's contract has now expired with Impact Wrestling, just because he's having his merchandise pulled from the store, doesn't necessarily mean we won't see him at a future Hard to Kill, but it definitely doesn't mean that we won't see him on future episodes of Impact Wrestling because they've already been filmed. Now, a factor into this, I suppose, as well, is has he already signed a contract with either WWE or AEW? Because if he has, that would make the Hard to Kill appearance a bit more difficult to navigate. However, he could have obviously said to WWE or AEW, look, I've committed to appearing at this Hard to Kill pay-per-view. It's what I want to do. It's what I've promised the officials to do. I want to put over Josh Alexander, my best friend, my tag team partner on the way out. Part of the agreeing to sign this contract is I have to do what's right here and I have to tie things up with Impact. So there is certainly a realm of possibilities, and just because Ethan Page's contract has expired now doesn't mean we won't see him a couple more times inside of an Impact Wrestling ring, or at the very least on an Impact Wrestling broadcast going forward. Now, when we talk about options here, as I mentioned, the fact that his merchandise has been pulled from the store has led a lot of people to be surprised that he could be going to WWE, and it's absolutely a possibility. I never said when I spoke about Ethan Page in the past here on the channel that it wasn't a possibility that Ethan Page could go to WWE and NXT. What I questioned about it in the past was, why would he? Why would he? You have to look at the reasons as to why potentially he would go to WWE. And of course, there are good reasons to go. It's WWE at the end of the day. It still is the biggest show in town. It still is the place that most people dreamed of going to when they were a kid. People dream of competing at WrestleMania. People dream of competing in the Royal Rumble match. People dream of traveling abroad, traveling the road of WWE, competing at a SummerSlam, doing the European tours, all that kind of stuff. People dream of that. That's why a lot of people get into pro wrestling, because they grew up watching WWE, so the aim eventually for a lot of people was to get to the WWE. Of course, it's not for everyone. You look at a Darby Allin or people like that, it's not always the same, but what is worth considering when it comes to people like Ethan Page and all that kind of stuff is he does have a lot of outside interests when it comes to pro wrestling. As I mentioned earlier, he does have a YouTube channel. The Karate Man vs. Ethan Page Page thing was all set up on a YouTube channel. He has a Twitch streaming channel. He has his own promotion. He has lots of outside interests. And if he goes to WWE, you know for a fact they're going to have to disappear, because we know WWE's policy on third-party platforms. You can't have a Twitch streaming service. You can potentially in NXT, but those rules could change. As far as I'm aware, potentially you are still allowed a YouTube channel, I think, at the moment, but that could change any day. In terms of a promotion, that's definitely not going to happen, is it? So there are lots of different aspects there to consider with Ethan Page. That's why I thought it was unlikely that he would go to WWE and NXT, because I didn't think he would want or be willing to sacrifice that. Now, potentially he has, potentially he will. It could just be a case of, you know what, the money is great and it's always been my dream to go to WWE. So we can't rule that out. And, you know, having the pitch of having Triple H on the other end of the phone, or actually meeting in person with Triple H and having one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, one of the most famous wrestlers of all time in Triple H, the star that he is, having him sitting opposite you and telling you to your face, we really want you, I'm going to book you so well in NXT, you're going to become a big star. That's very convincing. That's very, very convincing. And it's tough to turn that down if he's sitting there opposite you. So maybe that's the case for Ethan Page. Ultimately, we don't know. We don't know his future. We don't know where that lies currently at the moment. But indicators of him pulling the merch could suggest that it's WWE. I still think it would be better off for him to go to AEW. Personally, I wish he'd have never left Impact Wrestling. As I mentioned a million times here on the channel, I'd have preferred him to stay because I think he had so much more to offer Impact Wrestling. I think he needed to transition into being a singles wrestler. I felt that he needed to have a consistent run for maybe a year as a singles main eventer, and then his stock would be so high when he left Impact Wrestling that he could do something really, really special. That was what I wanted to see from Ethan Page going forward, because I did think he could be an Impact World Champion without a shadow of a doubt. And then if you're on the free market or your contract expiring as a world champion, your stock goes from here to here. It's night and day. And I wanted to see a longer term program with Josh Alexander and Ethan Page. I wanted to see, again, him transition into the main event scene in Impact Wrestling first. I wish we saw that, but ultimately it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So I think that's that. When it comes to his career in Impact Wrestling, you can't doubt it, because his career in Impact Wrestling it's fantastic. One half the longest reigning Impact World Tag Team Champions in history. The North will go down as one of the best tag teams, I think, in Impact Wrestling history. What they've done in Impact Wrestling over the last few years has been exceptional. They've really helped revitalize the tag team division at various times. And his career in Impact Wrestling will definitely not be forgotten at all. So he is certainly leaving in a better place than he was going in. And ultimately, this was a tag team in the North that was two singles guys put together that became a fantastic tag team. Usually, for me, I hate that. I hate when singles guys are put together into a tag team because it doesn't feel right. But this time now, it's almost difficult for them to become singles guys again because they're so associated with being the North. So it's a fascinating career. It's a fantastic run in Impact Wrestling. As I mentioned, I would have just rather it lasted an extra year because, of course, Josh Alexander isn't leaving Impact Wrestling until 2022. So we aren't going to see a North reunion for a long, long time, it looks like. At least 2 years. So Ethan Page, wherever he goes, he's going to be a singles, which is going to be interesting because I don't want to see him go to, say, an AEW, then suddenly he's tag teaming with someone else. That just wouldn't feel right. Right? It just wouldn't feel right at all. It wouldn't be what I want to see. Now, of course, regardless of who he does sign with, whether it is WWE, whether it is AEW, I mentioned about if or not he has signed a new deal with one of those companies already. Of course, next week, both companies have big TV specials. Where it's NXT, they have New Year's Evil, and if it's AEW, it's New Year's Smash. So what better way to make a statement, what better way to have the best debut possible, to have a debut that makes an impact, pun intended, than arriving on a TV special. It would certainly be an indicator of how WWE or AEW was going to book Ethan Page going forward, wouldn't it? Is if he makes his debut at a TV special, say a New Year's Evil, and after the Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor NXT Championship match, he gets involved in that, or if it's New Year's Smash, he gets involved in one of the matches there. At this point, when it comes to Ethan Page, anything is a possibility, without a shadow of a doubt. But previously, I'd have been very, very confident that he would be signing with AEW for a variety of reasons. As I mentioned, his outside interest, but also he has strong connections with Cody Rhodes. Of course, Cody Rhodes, he was actually a tag team champion with Ethan Page in his own promotion. And we know Cody Rhodes is a massive, massive fan of All Ego. He said it himself on social media. So I always felt that AEW was the likely destination for Ethan Page. But, of course, now this merchandise situation with being pulled from the store, it has, as it should, raised a lot of suggestions and pointers that he could be going to WWE, which I didn't see could happen. So that is very, very interesting. And look, at the end of the day, this merchandise being pulled from the merchandise store on his website could be a massive swerve, right? It absolutely could be a massive swerve. If he decides to debut in AEW using his real name, not Ethan Page, but Julian, he could just be doing that. And then if he's trying to imply to people that he's heading to WWE, so when he does arrive in AEW next week or the week after that or the week after that, then suddenly it's very surprising and people didn't see it coming. So maybe this is just a case of people expect him to go to AEW like myself, and by him pulling the merchandise from his store, people think, actually, could he go to WWE? It leads people to look in this direction, and then when it comes to his AEW debut, if it happens, when it happens, whatever, people would be very surprised then. So that is certainly a possibility as well. So either way, when it comes to the future of Ethan Page, we're not going to have to wait too long, are we, ultimately? We've been discussing this since the summer. What's the situation with Ethan Page? What's going to happen with his contract? The drama is ultimately going to end, I would think, very, very soon, because eventually he is, right now, arguably one of the hottest free agents in pro wrestling. And WWE and AEW, no doubt, want to sign Ethan Page right now. And it's just a case of who's going to blink first and where's he going to sign. And ultimately, we don't have to wait that long to find out anymore, which is going to be interesting. I have no doubt wherever he goes, he's going to have big success. There's no doubt in my mind if he goes to NXT, I think he'll be very successful in NXT. WWE, later on, going to Raw or SmackDown, that's something completely different. If anything, the odds would probably already be against him just by the nature of what happens from the transition to NXT to Raw or SmackDown. If he goes to AEW, no doubt in my mind he would have success in AEW. So I think wherever he goes, he'll be successful in the short term. In the long term, though, that's another question. And I think that is something that he does need to consider in his decision, but ultimately he might have already made his decision. At the moment there is a lot of unknown when it comes to Ethan Page, but the best thing about it is we're not going to have to wait too long to find out, so that's very exciting, of course. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Ethan Page pulling the merchandise from his online store ahead of his contract being now expired? He is now a free agent. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.